This was kind of a loud group, and now we're quiet. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Tulsa. I'm Karen Keith, and I'm delighted to see such a large crowd here today. Hi, Jan Law. We're glad to see you back today. Our song and pledge will be by past President Linda Bradshaw on the piano, Tom Wolfe. Visitor introductions by Michael Burks. And now our invocation will be given by past President Chuck Wilson.
Our Father, thank you for all of our blessings, for Rotary and the work we do and lives we change all over the world, for the women and men in this great club and how we work together for the greater good, for the children. So much of what we do is to give life, hope, and support to the least of these. For our leadership, not only in this club, but through our elected officials, we are so thankful for men and women such as Congressman Lankford, who are willing to make the sacrifices to do the people's work. And we just celebrated the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we all know about his dream. But thank you, God, for the changes you make in our hearts through the actions and examples of others. For all of this and so much more, we praise your name. Amen.
Good afternoon, Rotarians and friends. Please join me as we sing America the Beautiful, followed by the pledge. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies full and to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Tulsa. We are club number 2500, District 6110. I will introduce our guest today and hold your applause until I am finished. A guest of Congressman Lankford, Matt McKay. We have four-way test guests today: Emma Keely, Robert Beers, Shauna Wright, Cornelius Johnson, Madison Rainbow, and Taylor Spaulding. Guest today, Bob Spears is hosting Jerry Stordahl, a Rotarian from Minot, North Dakota. Tom Byers has Bruce Hine, Director of Government Media Affairs, Magellan. Vicki Adams is hosting Crystal Perry, Tulsa County. Michael Wallace has Dennis Simler with Tulsa County Treasurer. David Downing has Clint Parr, Macrosolve. Bob Berry has Don Frame, a friend. Karen Keith, Don Kroll, a friend. Steve Mason has Julie Antis, a colleague. Dustin Holder is hosting Andrew Martin, Sawyer Manufacturing. Jim Dunn has Jeff Dunn, his son. Mike Neal is hosting Jeff McLaughlin with the Tulsa Regional Chamber. Chuck Wilson has David Littlefield with Littlefield Brand Development. Susan Meeker has Tom Maxwell with Flintco. And Marty Alexander has Jan Lobb, former Rotarian. That is all our guests. Our guest Rotarians today are from the Sunrise, Eric Johnson. Hello, Eric. Tulsa Sunrise also is Steve Reed, and also Tom Clark, past district governor. From Tulsa Southside, David Hughes. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, Michael. Our Rotary sponsors this week are Doug Paget, Pendergraph Systems, Dave Moore, Tulsa Wealth Advisors, Raymond James. We encourage you to do business with your fellow Rotarians. Please thank today's sponsors and all of our volunteers. Please take note that because of other events at the church this afternoon, all committee meeting rooms are across the street in the Youth Fellowship Center. You can reach those rooms by crossing the Sky Bridge over Main Street on the second floor of this building, and you can see where your committee meetings are. So it's Above and Beyond 211, Camp Enterprise 210, Club Foundation 209, Long Range Planning 212. On behalf of the club, I'd like to extend condolences to Bill Ree on the passing of his wife Nancy on December 11th. Services were held last month. Cards are on your table for extending your sympathies to Bill. Please keep his family in your prayers. And I'd like to welcome some special groups in the room today. Our Tulsa Rotaract Club has joined us, and I encourage you to refer young leaders from within your businesses to participate in Rotaract. Guys, wave. Thank you for being here. They're back in the back. Thanks. And Bob Leeser with Tulsa Global Alliance, Vice President of Programming, brought along a group of Brazilian youth ambassadors with him today. Would you all stand up and wave? Thank you for being here. Awesome. Again, because of a large event in the church this afternoon, the church staff needs access to Thomas Hall immediately after today's meeting. We ask that you not linger in the room after we adjourn, but rather take your conversations out into the hallway so that servers may begin clearing the room as soon as possible. We appreciate that. Lou Ann Bullinger chaired the four-way speech contest. She did an incredible job. My thanks to you for all of your efforts. And now today, we get to meet the winner. Lou Ann?
Thank you, President Karen. It's my honor to introduce our four-way test speech contest participants and our winners. And we held our competition last Wednesday at AHA, thanks to the Arts and Humanities Council, and we had 6 participants. Many thanks to TTCU, the credit union, and to Spirit Bank. We really appreciate you, and to Claire Collins with Louder Than a Bomb, who performed that evening. We also want to thank our judges, who included Jesse Guardiola with the Tulsa Police Department. He was our winner of last year's Above and Beyond Award contest. Karen Keith, our president, thank you very much. Rhonda Renz, our incoming president, and Tom Byers, who's our incoming chairman of the board. They all served as judges and did a great job. I'd also like to quickly announce the members of our committee, so if you'll please stand and stay standing until we're done with our introductions. Tim Lyons, Rhonda Renz, Don Duca, Tim Colwell, John Howland, Jerry Bates, Wanda Hartman, Desiree Doherty, Alicia Herrera, Eric Ortega, Amber Tate, who's a prospective member, and Linda Bradshaw, who served as our wonderful MC for the evening. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize Clay Langley, who came that evening. He's our area governor and a member of the Rotary Club of Sand Springs. So 6 students participated in this speech contest and showed us several examples of how we can apply the four-way speech into our everyday life. I'm going to introduce them, and when I introduce you, please stand up. I'm also going to introduce Shauna Wright, who is the speech coach for TPS and Memorial High School. We also have our contestant Madison Ringbolt, a 10th grader at Memorial High School. Cornelius Johnson, an 11th grader at Memorial High School. In fact, Cornelius just won the Southeast Rotary Club's four-way speech contest yesterday. Congratulations. Our third place winner, Taylor Spalding, a 10th grader at Memorial High. Our second place winner, Robert Beers, a senior at Riverfield Country Day School. And now our first place winner, Emma Keely, an 11th grader at Riverfield Country Day School. She's accompanied by her parents, David and Michelle Keely. Please stand. Emma, will you please come to the podium? Emma is also vice president of her student council and participates in speech and debate, the drumline, rock band, and serves on the prom committee. So we are recording her speech today, and a recording will be sent to our area governor for consideration for district performance. And so now, let's give Emma our attention.
All right, so I'm just going to give the speech that I gave last week. All right. This past fall break, I braved the journey of a 3-day camping trip with my father and my brother. Now, while hiking through the Wichita Mountains, I noticed a sign, and it read, "Leave no trace." Now, I don't know why it was a shock to me. We hear it all the time. I mean, from kindergarten teachers and the Boy Scout oath and regularly on signs. But for some reason, it stood out to me. And I started to wonder, what if we followed that advice in every aspect of our lives? What if we tried to live without ever changing anyone or anything around us? Imagine a person who lived their life and left no trace. It would be like they never existed. What was the purpose of that life? See, we need to give a trace in order to give meaning to our existence. I believe in leaving something behind, a legacy of sorts, through other people. Now, not everyone can change the world by inventing electricity or chocolate chip cookies, so we leave smaller traces of our existence. All you have to do to leave a substantial trace on this earth is to try and leave a small piece of yourself in every person that you come into contact with. Now, to leave a piece of yourself in another person is to touch that person or affect them in some way. Sometimes the people you have touched have no idea you've had any sort of influence on them. The beautiful thing is that you can end up touching people that you've never even met. When someone has a piece of you inside them, they share it with others. Herbert J. Taylor touched many people when he created the 4-way Rotary test in the 1930s. That test is composed of 4 simple yet very important questions that allow us to evaluate things. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? First, is it the truth? That person I spoke about earlier, who leaves no trace or evidence that they aren't truly living. They merely exist, and as soon as they don't, they're gone. So leaving an indication of life is the only way to live truly. Is it fair to all concerned? In order to leave legacy, consent is needed on both sides. No one person gets more out of it than the other. To be inspired or helped is of equal importance as being allowed to inspire or help. Will leaving a trace build goodwill and better friendships? Goodwill is defined as a friendly or helpful attitude. Leaving a trace is about inspiring someone or changing them for the better. It is through goodwill that it's even possible to leave parts of yourself in another person. Will it be beneficial to all concerned? When someone leaves a trace of their existence, they make their life mean something. When someone else means something to you, you get the opportunity to pass that on as a never-ending cycle. It benefits every side. See, the first way to touch someone is to inspire them. During the years 1929 and 1968, there lived a man named Martin Luther King Jr. This man led a civil rights movement and inspired thousands of people with his ideas and his passion. Before Martin Luther King Jr. joined the civil rights movement, he attended a lecture and researched the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. Many of his non-violent beliefs were inspired by Gandhi's teachings. Gandhi, by inspiring that one man, was able to reach thousands through the people that Martin Luther King Jr. touched. Another way to truly leave a piece of you in someone is to help them. I once heard a speaker talk about a girl named Rachel Scott. She was a student at Columbine High School in 1999 during the worst high school massacre since 1927. Rachel was the first victim to be shot and killed. She was the kind of person that impacted everyone who knew her. She was kind to everyone and went out of her way to be so. One boy she knew talks about how Rachel essentially saved him from himself. He had been contemplating his own suicide until Rachel came along and was just kind to him. That boy has a piece of Rachel inside of him, and since she is the reason that he is still living, he shares Rachel in every single thing he does and every single person he touches. Now, it is important to leave a trace because the present does not last. Doing something for the now is doing something that will disappear as soon as you stop doing it. When leaving a trace, it's not about being recognized or remembered. It's about making a difference. Because your life's worth isn't measured in dollar signs or Facebook friends, but rather the number of people that you touch and the tracks you leave behind. Thank you.
Emma, congratulations, and thank you for sharing today. Appreciate it. And thanks to Mom and Dad for being here with her. In announcements, Michael Turner, $5,400 Club Foundation grant to my dear friend.
Thank you, President Keith. And at this time, I'd ask Greg Conway to come up, please. The Rotary Club of Tulsa Foundation grant is very pleased to award $5,400 to Tulsa Boys Home. And with us today, of course, is Greg Conway, the Executive Director and Club President of the Sand Springs Sunset, not to be confused with Sunshine Club. And for many of you who know him, he was a longtime member of this Rotary Club until about 7 years ago when he jumped over to the other side, but definitely glad to have him. And it's also a privilege just to know Greg. He served our country as a U.S. Marine, and now he obviously serves our community as the leader of the Tulsa Boys Home. So,
Thank you, Michael, Karen. Thanks to everybody on the committee. Wow, nice to be here and see a lot of old familiar faces, some new faces. Do you all know, because I know a lot of you know this, but some of you probably don't know that this club established the Tulsa Boys Home. This was a program of the Tulsa Boys Home in 1918. Yes. Anyway, we're on a short time frame. I want to give you a quick glimpse of a new and exciting initiative going on at the Tulsa Boys Home. We just got this clip sent to me yesterday, so I want to. It's 90 seconds, Karen, and I'll show the clip. Say thank you.
So the Tulsa Boys Home's been around for like 95 years. Since 1918, was established as a home for orphan boys, and we had heard about the idea of maybe having a therapy dog at the boys' home. So we find out about a dog that was orphaned because of the devastating tornadoes that leveled Moore, Oklahoma. It's amazing how the impact of just one dog can have on 64 boys and the staff on a day-to-day basis here at Tulsa Boys Home. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it day in and day out.
You know, Twister, was a homeless dog once, you know, in the tornado and all that, but, you know, now he's around kids just like us, and, you know, he can feel like he's family and we're family, and, you know, he's kind of just like us, just another brother.
Twister has enabled some of the boys to really stay focused on their therapy. One of our guys, I was told just within the first week that Twister was here, first time in a year, he was able to sit through a group therapy session and stay focused on the topic at hand because Twister was at his feet. Unbelievable. I mean, it's just a match made in heaven.
So that's just one little piece of a happy ending to, did you get that? I mean, that dog was orphaned. They couldn't find the owners. He was a puppy. He went to the pound. They rescued him from the pound, sent him to prison. He went to the prison training program to make him into a therapy dog. And then about that time, we were looking into getting a therapy dog. And so Twister, the orphaned dog from the Moore tornado, is now working with the orphaned boys at Tulsa Boys Home. Thanks so much. Appreciate all of your ongoing support at Tulsa Boys Home. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Semper Fi, Michael.
Stephanie Cameron.
Hi, everyone. We are pleased to present the Girl Scouts of Eastern Oklahoma with a gift of $4,540. These funds will be used to purchase CPR kits, which will be used in training their members and parents with life-saving skills. We have CEO of the Girl Scouts of Eastern Oklahoma and fellow Rotarian, Roberta Preston, here to accept the award.
On behalf of the board, the staff, and especially the girls of Eastern Oklahoma, I'd like to thank you for the gift. This will support two very important programs. The mission of Girl Scouting is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character that make the world a better place. One of the things that we promote are our outdoor skills because girls build confidence in themselves and in their abilities by doing things outdoors. This involves a lot of water sports. We have significant growth in our canoeing and kayaking programs, also our sailing program. So part of these funds will be used to replace our life jackets. But the other piece is a very, very important piece. We do CPR and first aid training, and we'll be buying new mannequins. But one of our Girl Scouts who'd gone through this training last year actually had to deploy it as she saved a life at a swimming pool using the skills. So she truly made the world a better place. And so thank you for your gift and thank you for allowing us to continue.
Trish Kirkstra. I bet I know what you're going to be talking about. Host families.
I bet you're all tired of hearing about this, but okay, this is our last announcement. As you know, this Friday we have 200 international students coming to Tulsa, part of our Scry weekend. A lot of Brazilians, I'll have you young people know. We're very excited about it. But we need host families for every single one of these 200 students this Friday. As of this morning, we have places for 180 of them. Woohoo! So we only need 20 more spots. So that means that's 10 people in this room to say, Trisha, I'll take 2, or 5, we'll take a little bit more. Or if you already are signed up, okay, Trisha, I'll take 1 more. But whatever. I'm sure we'll be able to proceed with the program as soon as we get these. Just kidding. Okay, I'll be at this table at the end of the meeting. Please come visit. And that way, when Eric Ortega and I are working tonight, matching the database on when the kids get here, what time you can pick them up, who wants somebody from Germany, all that stuff, we'll be able to merge our database tonight. So if you can help host someone from Friday afternoon to Saturday afternoon, 2 students, please see me after the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trish. Nice try. Marty Alexander.
John,
Yes, ma'am.
how many years have you been married?
13,
And what do you attribute to that long success?
14.
14.
Sorry. Yeah, 14 years. You know,
And
that
how
long
can-
success is a
Yes.
maintenance program. A nice dinner in a quiet place, champagne, a little music. Does wonders for a marriage.
And how often do you do that?
Every week. Yeah. Wife goes on Monday, I go on Thursday.
So what do you do on Valentine's Day?
Well, Valentine's Day, Rotary is a group of mentors. Ed is my mentor in the marriage department, and he told me when I first came on with Rotary, he said, plug into your Rotary events with your wife and connect her. So I'm very excited to say that, what was the question? That this
So
year,
what are you going to do on Valentine's Day?
yeah, on Valentine's Day, we're going to plug in and go to the Rotary event. So we're real excited. Valentine's Day was for guys because it's a time that you can make up. So, this is my big event, and this year it's with the Rotary Club Valentine. I get to dance, music, we'll even be together. But, I didn't follow all of Ed's advice, so I was a little bit of a stinker this year. So I've really got to make up special, so I even invited the in-laws. So the wife can talk to the old mother-in-law, not the old mother-in-law, the mother-in-law, and I'll get some brownie points for next year, so I'm really excited.
So you're really making points. And yes, the rest of you can make points also. Bring your friends, your parents, your loved one, your sweetheart. Come alone and enjoy an evening of fun and frivolity. And learn all about the Woody Guthrie Center for those who haven't been there. It is Tulsa's hottest spot. You're going to learn more about it next week because that's what our program is. So please sign up with us here. You stop at a table outside after Rotary in the hall. Scoot out and come right to me. Sign up. You can sign up on dacdb.com and that will
Okay.
come to you soon. Okay. Also, I still
Thank
have
you.
space on the trip to Sydney, Australia.
All right. Hey, Janet, if we skip, can you make all this happen next week? Okay, let's do that. Thank you, Miss Janet. Sarge, appreciate it. Now, before I introduce our Rotarian of the day, I want to clarify for our guests that in keeping with our club practice to have announced candidates speak in a debate format, we will be inviting today's speaker to return closer to Election Day along with his opponents. Congressman Lankford accepted this speaking engagement before he announced his candidacy and has agreed to confine his remarks to the topics he originally planned to cover. So, please hold any campaign-related inquiries for after the meeting adjourns. And for the media, you will, of course, have an opportunity to talk to the congressman one-on-one after we adjourn. And right over here outside this door is an area where you can do that. And now our Rotarian of the day is Tom Byers, Senior Government Affairs Representative for Magellan Midstream Partners. Tom joined our club in January 2000. He has journeyed to Nicaragua several times and will be serving his second time as chairman of the board of Rotary next year. Tom is both a Club Foundation Fellow and a Paul Harris Fellow, and yes, he is a diehard Jayhawk fan. Welcome, Rotarian of the Day, Tom Byers.
Thank you, President Karen. It is indeed a privilege for me to introduce today's speaker, Congressman James Lankford. Prior to being elected to Congress, the Congressman served as the director of the Falls Creek Youth Camp from 1996 through 2009. Now, Falls Creek is not your ordinary youth camp. In fact, it's the largest of its kind in the world. They employ 150 staff members. And during the summer, they will have 51,000 students and adults attending, which, by the way, makes it, at any given time, considerably larger than the combined populations of Livermore, Iowa, and Marysville, Kansas. So during his time at Falls Creek, the Congressman coordinated mission and community service trips to Belize, Malawi, England, Wales, and Germany. Now, while the Congressman is a relative newcomer to politics, his advancement within the U.S. House of Representatives could probably be described as meteoric. Having just been elected for the first time in 2010, he now serves as the chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee, which is one of the top leadership positions within the House. Congressman Lankford also serves on the House Committees on Budget and Oversight, Government and Reform, where he is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Energy Policy, Healthcare, and Entitlements. Those of us in energy, banking, and some other industries are pleased that the Congressman has emerged as a leader in fighting government regulations. He is dedicated to freeing up our businesses so that we can add jobs and help the economy grow. Congressman Lankford has been married to Cindy for over 20 years, and they are the proud parents of 2 daughters, Hannah and Jordan. Given the recent developments in Oklahoma politics, as President Karen said, this is a very timely visit, and as she mentioned, the Congressman has certainly agreed to our custom of not having campaign speeches. But with that in mind, please help me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Oklahoma Congressman James Lankford.
Well, good day. Glad to be able to be with you on it. And Emma, can you come give that speech in Washington, D.C.? Four-way test would not be a bad set of tests to have in a lot of conversation in D.C. So very much appreciate that. Maybe I can catch you afterwards. It was funny to hear your biography as you came up, because almost everything you're involved in high school, I was involved in high school. And so I'll be able to get the rest of that story from there. Can I just ask, just a personal privilege as well, how many of you have ever been to Falls Creek? Okay, quite a few on it. It is interesting. It's one of those Oklahoma jewels that we just lose track of because it's in Oklahoma, and we just think, of course we have Falls Creek. Doesn't everybody? And we lose track of exactly what Tom was mentioning. Thanks for talking a little bit about that. It is the largest camp in America, and we get used to it in Oklahoma and think it's no big deal. But you leave Oklahoma, and people are a little stunned when they hear about Falls Creek and hear about a camp that has between 5,000 and 7,000 teenagers a week. Usually it's a little bit of shock in their system to think, what in the world do you do with that many juveniles at any one given place? The second part is there's just nothing else like that. I have had multiple people that have caught me in D.C. and have found out what I did before and have said, your work with juveniles well prepared you to be able to come to D.C. So they very well could be right in the process. Let me just talk through a couple of things. And what I'd been asked to come for, this had been a while back when I was invited to be able to come, what I'd been asked to come for was a legislative update. What's happening right now in D.C. and where are things going? And what do we expect to see in this next year? It is not unusual for this kind of club to see how you start your meetings, see how you interact, to understand that this group of all groups understands that the United States is a very unique place. Not only in our compassion that we have for people expressed by all the different things that are happening today, the way that we care for people around the world that is uniquely different than many other places, our economic activity. We are the 25% of the world's economy, and as everyone complains about where our economy is, and it could be much stronger than it is right now, we're still a quarter of the world's economy. And when the United States gets a cold, the rest of the world is miserable. There is something to be done when we bring greater stability to it. So the issues I want to address today are some legislative things that are dealing with where we are as a nation and where are we trying to head in the days ahead and how do we actually get there. A couple of things I want to be able to bring up to speed on. I don't know if anyone's heard, but we're slightly in debt as a nation right now. $17.2 trillion in debt. When I came 3 years ago, and as Tom mentioned, I'm on the budget committee. When I came 3 years ago, that was a committee I asked to be on because that is the main battlefield that's happening in our nation right now, is around our budget and spending. On that budget committee 3 years ago, our overspending that 1 year was $1.4 trillion in overspending that 1 year. In 3 years now, that's down to $680 billion of overspending. So it's cut in half in 3 years, but we still have a very long way to go. I bring that up because there's all this conversation about the budget and what's going to happen, and I want to set some people at ease because there are folks that would say, we can just solve all this budget in a year. And I typically smile at them and say, 10 years ago, our nation had a car loan. Now we have a jumbo mortgage. This is not going to be easily resolved in a year. And if anyone comes to you and says, we will fix our budget if we'll just do this, you should probably smile at them and say, there's probably more that has to be done to that. Because it's a very significant thing that's happening. In December, the budget deal that came about was historic in some ways because it codified what we'd put in place in 2011. In 2011, we put a process in place to do a 10-year plan to try to limit our spending in each year. And the worry was, how would that be protected? Sequestration, has anyone heard that term? Probably no one used it 3 years ago, but now it seems to get thrown around all the time. That simple 10-year plan that was put into place would say we'd like to have mandatory spending cuts, and if we can't get the mandatory cuts, it'll be in discretionary, and it was a check mark layout of how that would happen. 2 years of straight down spending, and then for the next 8 years, spending would be very limited in its growth, below the inflation rate, to basically bring spending down slowly over the next 10 years. The frustration was, could it hold? Could you hold that together? Because it's a multi-year plan to get us back to it. First year, dramatic cuts across the board in every area. The second year cuts were to kick in this month. The second year cuts were all in defense, all. And it was dramatic cuts in defense that were coming for this year. So the December budget agreement was a conversation across the aisle and between the House and the Senate to say, is there a way to keep the deficit reduction and protect defense? To not have defense have the third major cut in 4 years. That agreement was made in December to keep those cuts, but to also protect our defense. Right now, the conversation in our state and around the country, if that had not passed in December, would be how large the cuts are on bases all over the country, because they were to start in January. The sequestration and all that happened, all the furloughs and all that kicked in would have already begun right now. But they're not. We're not talking about that because that was resolved. Then step 2 of that was the appropriations bill that just came up a couple of weeks ago. That appropriations bill would then put into place the details of that budget agreement from December. That appropriations bill, I'm sad to say, had some problems. As that appropriations bill came to the floor, it listed out a lot of good things and a lot of things to put it back in place, especially in the defense areas. But it also put in what I call our zoology lesson of the day. How many of you know what budget chimps are? Anybody tracking chimps? It's called changes in mandatory programs. It's when they do the budgeting of it and get down to the appropriations part and they don't have enough money, and so they'll go into basically a savings account or a mandatory spending account, and we'll move that to the next year, and then we'll spend more this year and call it a savings. It's really not a savings. It's a shifting of an account. One of those was the Crime Victim Funds account, $9 billion in a Crime Victims Funds account that was scheduled to be spent this year. They said, no, we won't do that this year. We'll spend that next year. Then we have $9 billion more to save. It really doesn't save anything. The appropriations bill ended up overspending $18 billion rather than keeping to the agreement that was set in December. We have some very real issues and some things that need to be resolved long term. Not only the serious budget issues that we have, but the way that we take on those budget issues. And we're going to have to take them on one at a time, a piece at a time. It's part of my fight in the Budget Committee right now to be able to work through that process. But I want you to know, because many, many people feel like nothing is getting better. I want you to hear there is some improvement. Quite frankly, we as Americans are very hard on ourselves, rightfully so. Because we're hard on ourselves, it helps the entire world. But we have this sense that nothing is happening. Some things are happening. We just have an incredibly long way to go to be able to walk through that process. In the days ahead, we're going to deal with something called the Farm Bill. When the Farm Bill comes up, it'll be loud and noisy, and everyone will wonder why we're arguing so much about farming. It's because 20% of the Farm Bill is about farming, and 80% of it is about nutrition programs and other subsidies. That balance is a big fight for us. One of the things that's going to be pushed, and you'll hear a lot of conversation about, and I don't know how many people are Republicans or Democrats in the room, but you'll hear, I can promise you in the days ahead, that Republicans are throwing the poor under the bus trying to balance the budget, because we're dealing with some of the nutrition programs and some of the waste and fraud in it. Here's the crazy thing that we propose that we hope to be able to finish out in the next couple of days in the Farm Bill. The crazy proposal are these 3 things. Number 1 is, if you receive food stamps, you should actually use them for food. Number 2, I know, these are radical ideas. Number 2, you should actually qualify for food stamps if you receive food stamps. If you qualify, you get them, and if you don't, you don't. And the third thing is, if you're an able-bodied adult with no dependents, did you catch all that? Able-bodied adult with no dependents, you should have to work at least 20 hours a week to get food stamps. We don't think that's a crazy idea. The perspective is this, and I know it gets caught up in all the budget numbers. This is not a budget issue, this is a people issue. There are three things that if you're going to help our nation come out of poverty, to actually be successful to get out of poverty, there are three characteristics you're going to find of people that actually escape poverty. When these three things are combined, 97% of the people are able to exit poverty. When any one of them goes away, the percentage begins to drop rapidly. Now, I'm very aware there are exceptions to the rule because when I list these three things to you, one of them I'm an exception to the rule for, and my family escaped poverty. But here are those three exceptions. If your family is a two-parent household, had a quality education, and has a job, 97% of the people escape poverty. I didn't say a big job, a job at all. But if your family doesn't have a two-parent household, it's much tougher, not unachievable. My family, I didn't grow up in a two-parent household. We grew up in a pretty rough life. But my mom loved me, and quite frankly, like many of you growing up, we had no idea we were poor. I didn't, growing up as a kid. Because of that love and that affection, what was happening, and grandparents that were very invested, and a mom who was awesome. Quality education, elementary, middle school, high school. Getting on to college is a great thing, but even quality education, finishing high school, is a huge investment. I know Rotarians invest a lot in education. Press on. That is one of the greatest ladders out of poverty that we have as a culture. But this third thing about a job is a really big issue. There is this sense that we can be compassionate by continuing to provide people checks. I don't know of any parent who dreams that their child will grow up to one day stand in line in a government agency. The dream for them is to be successful and to be on their own and to be a great functioning adult. We say all the time, my wife and I, to our girls, we're not trying to raise godly kids, we're trying to raise godly adults. Because we want the fruit of that to be able to come out of their life. That's where parents are. We want to help as a nation to encourage people out of dependency. That our safety net would be more like a net under a trapeze than it would be a fishing net. One is designed to catch you when you fall and get you out of it. The other is designed to hold you. This big conversation, and it's coming in the next couple of weeks, will circle around what does compassion look like. I want to give you a heads up about that, because that's a conversation you will probably have with others as well. What does it look like to help those? We have a safety net, and we're an incredibly compassionate nation. Now, what do we do with it? Let me give you a couple other things, and I'm going to take some questions, some things that are coming up. I'm working a lot on Social Security disability right now. We have some major issues in Social Security disability. There's a tremendous amount of fraud, and I bring this to your attention because 2.5 years from now, SSDI is scheduled to go insolvent. Insolvent does not mean bankrupt. That means every person who receives a disability check gets a haircut to bring the amount down to the amount that we actually have in the account, and that's coming in. These are the most vulnerable in our society. And people that are defrauding the system are literally taking money away from the disabled and from the hardworking taxpayer. And there'll be a major push to say, how do we fix this? Last thing, I'm going to take questions. Oversight. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a little bit of gridlock right now between the Senate and the House. I know, you probably haven't seen it. So the question is, how do we handle that and what do we do? My push, by the way, behind the scenes is, we've got a bunch of big messaging bills that are coming up. I think we should break them up into smaller bills because we can find some common ground on some of these conservative principles. The American people, on the whole, if you sit down with conservative ideas, are overwhelmingly supportive of these ideas in isolation. But what happens is, and it happens on both sides of the aisle, and it drives me crazy up there, we'll get an idea that the Americans are completely behind, and then when it starts moving through committee, add something that we know is completely toxic to the other side and try to force them to vote on it. And when they vote against it and it fails, we're like, yeah, it failed. And then somebody goes and campaigns on it. It was never intended to pass. It was intended to be messaging, and the whole time, that seed of a good idea is still sitting there idle. My push is to say, knock it off. We're stuck. Let's find the areas that are the conservative principles that the Americans are completely behind, and let's move those one at a time. But until we get to that spot, we're also pushing a lot of oversight. You're going to hear this on both the House and the Senate side, to continue to deal with how do we get into the waste and the fraud? How do we begin to deal with the issues? and actually get the federal government back to a level what it was designed to do. The federal government will never be efficient, I know, as shocking as well. It will never be efficient because of its size. The only way you become more efficient is to become more local. That's how you do it. That's why county commissioners are 10 times more efficient than anyone in the federal government. Because the county... True to that. Folks on the county level have to account for every scoop of asphalt and know exactly what the inventory is. Folks in the federal government are like, it's 10 billion to waste. That's a rounding error. It's where we are. So we've got to be able to find a way to be able to push things back to more local decision-making because you'll get more efficiency there. But until that time, a lot of the oversight's essential. I'm going to mention one of those that I just want to bring up to you, and that's the issue of Benghazi. Now, again, I have no idea how many Republicans or Democrats are here, and I've had lots of my Democrat friends say to me, just drop it. This is partisan. This is sniping at it. Let me tell you why this is important. In 1998, our embassies in Tanzania and Kenya were attacked. There's an accountability review board that was written, report that was written at the end of those attacks and that investigation. If you took the findings from that accountability review board and laid it on top of Benghazi, it would sound like you're writing about Benghazi. What does that tell me? We did not learn the lesson from 1998, and the same mistakes were made again. It is important to know how accountability is done, who is responsible, what are we going to do different, and how is this going to be applied? It's important not only for the American people to have the confidence of that, but also so we don't make the same dumb mistake again and put people's lives at risk again. I was on the House floor last week talking about Benghazi again and trying to lay out, here are the unanswered questions. The lead of that is, there's a set of video that was made that night. Y'all have all seen the video of the burning car and all that the media went in and took after the attack was over. There's video from multiple cameras within the compound and a drone that was flying over the compound the whole time. I've seen the classified video. The American people had never been allowed to see that video. And all these questions that continue to spin out that the American people want answers to would be answered if the video would be released. And so my press is to say, there's nothing classified about that video. Let the American people see it. Keep the administration from continuing to hold on to it. I got on the House floor, I talked about that, and walked away. And as is typical, as I walked off, I thought, probably 9 people watching C-SPAN right now. I hope they thought that was good. And I wonder if that'll make a difference. And a couple hours later, I got an email from Ty Wood's dad, who was one of the SEALs that was killed that night. And he sent me a very kind email and said, thanks for not forgetting my son. Today would have been his 43rd birthday. We're still looking for answers. So are we. This is an investigation like several others that we need to just get the answers and wrap it up. Stop dragging their feet, and let's get it done. Let me field some questions for a while. There's probably other things you want to talk about. Yes, sir. His question was, is there any realistic hope of a federal balanced budget? Let me give you 2 scenarios. One is obviously there was a vote on that in the mid-1990s to have a federal balanced budget requirement in an amendment to the Constitution. That vote failed by 1 vote in the Senate. 1. Now just imagine our economy right now, if in the 1990s we would have had a balanced budget requirement, how different things would be right now. It failed by 1 vote. The next time that was actually voted on as a constitutional amendment was actually 2 years ago, when we forced that to a vote again, and it failed large. A lot of the folks that had voted for it, and I'll leave parties out of this, a lot of the folks that had voted for it in the 1990s now don't agree now. I personally had a conversation with the president in January of last year. And in my conversation with the president, I told a story about Hezekiah. And again, I don't know how many folks here, I come from a biblical worldview is where I come from. That's where a lot of the principles that I live by and function by. With the president, I said, Mr. President, I just want to explain to you perspective of some people in Oklahoma. I said, the story from 2 Kings about the king Hezekiah was a great king during his time, but he made some decisions that led directly to the downfall of the nation in the next generation. and the nation collapsed because of the decisions he made at the end. I want you to know that people in Oklahoma are concerned that what's happening right now in Washington, D.C. will lead to the collapse of the nation fiscally in the next generation, and that we are saying this time is tough, so to make it easier on us, we're going to make it harder on our kids. And we don't want to do that. And my statement to him then was, is there any way you and I can agree that we're going to work towards a balanced budget? It was the crown jewel of Newt Gingrich and President Clinton. It's what they still talk about all the time, is that they were able to balance the budget. His response to me was, no, I don't see that as a goal for our nation anymore. We need to work towards what he calls sustainable deficits. That is, bring down the deficit spending to nothing but interest. I absolutely disagree. Our current interest payments right now are about $250 billion a year just in interest payments. CBO estimates within 9 years, our interest alone will be $857 billion. That's just interest. If you want to get a good rule of thumb to compare that to, our defense budget is about $600 billion. Interest alone will be $857 billion on our deficit. I wish that we could find some common ground on that. He absolutely disagrees, and I disagree with that. But we'll keep pressing anyway. Yes, sir.
On the fraud and waste issue, and speaking of Senator Coburn, it seems like that to some extent he's been the only spokesperson about this issue. But then we don't really hear much about what comes of that or whether there's any. So first of all, how much of it do you believe there is? How much difference would it make?
Okay.
And what can be done about it?
Okay, there are things that can be done. He has been a champion for that. Let me give you a couple things that he has made progress on his behalf on that. He has fought for years against earmarks. The class that I came in with in 2011 pushed, and we have an earmark ban now in Congress. That was something he fought for 10 years, but it's done. I fought for a rule change in the start of the Congress, this session of Congress, that in the House of Representatives, you cannot start a new program until there's evaluation if it's actually duplicating an existing one. As crazy as it sounds, that's never been a rule before. So part of stopping duplication in government is preventing more from happening. So that rule change is now in the House rules. Now, no one's going to talk about that. Probably none of you even knew that. I mean, that's one of those behind-the-scenes technical issues. But to me, that's where the battle's won. It's going to be in those little areas to actually get in there in the grunt work away from the camera and to try to get some areas of progress. That's an area of progress, to get in the rules to try to prevent future stuff. It has been Dr. Coburn's great frustration that there are reports on duplication, but no action on eliminating it. And I would have to agree. Yes, ma'am. Simpson Bowles is a very, very large report. We can talk about some of the specifics. I would take parts of the Simpson Bowles and would reject other parts of it. The seriousness of it is you have to look at everything. You have to put it on the table and say, what are the real consequences? Ron Johnson's a senator from Wisconsin. He and I are friends, and one of the things, he's a business guy. We came in at the same time in 2011. One of the things that he talks about all the time is we can't seem to circle around and agree on the problem. In D.C., as silly as this sounds, in D.C., there's no common agreement on what the problem is. For instance, Harry Reid will say consistently that Social Security is stable and fine until 2034. So there's no need to deal with it right now. There's not a problem. Okay, I absolutely disagree. If you actually get up to that year, you're going to find there's a major problem. So all those things, what Simpson Bowles started with is let's define out the problems. And then let's put all the options on the table and let's find out what that can actually be done. Now, I don't think the whole proposal of let's do a big grand bargain, that's not going to happen in this Washington. It's not going to happen. There are deep divisions on that in multiple areas. Are there areas we can make progress? Yes. Unfortunately, it's going to be feet and inches rather than in miles, but we can't just sit around and do nothing. So I would set aside the big grand bargain and say, okay, where can we make progress? Let's take a couple more. Yes, ma'am. You survived. Yes, there has been great conversation on that. The first things first on it, if you're going to actually do real budget cuts and real reforms of those systems, you have to get the appropriations process back up to speed. There are 12 appropriations bills that have to be passed. When you were there were 13, but now there's 12 appropriations bills that have to be passed that fund every area of government. That's not happened in 2 decades in that structure. 2 decades. You talk about a broken process. This year, with the budget agreement that was done in December, it set 2 years in a row the budget agreement and sets up 2014 to actually work through appropriations bills. If that occurs, which it looks like it's going to because the number's already set in that agreement, that would be the first time in 2 decades to do the process right. It's one of those behind-the-scenes process reforms that will make a real difference, and it doesn't matter at all if you don't do it because nothing gets fixed. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's a great question. Most of those, and I hear it all the time, by the way. My favorite was when I was elected in 2011, I ran into someone not long afterwards and said, well, you've got retirement for life now. First week you're there. I said, they didn't fill me in on that in the orientation. I somehow missed that part of it. A lot of things that you hear on the internet, I know this may be surprising. Not everything's true. I don't want to bust anyone's bubble on that. But a lot of things that fly around were true in the 80s and 90s. But when Newt Gingrich came in with the contract with America, many of those things saw dramatic changes. And those are still in place. Let me give you some of my favorites. There's a free health club that you can join. No, there's not. There is a health center on grounds. It's $250 a year to join. It was free in the 80s, but that was changed years ago. How about my favorite? You don't pay into Social Security. Yes, I do. Same as everyone else. Here's my other favorite. You don't have to go through TSA security. Yes, I do. In fact, I've been randomly selected for the pat-down. The whole thing. We're in the same systems on that. Our healthcare did change. Our healthcare as of last year was the exact same as every federal employee. I met a U.S. Marshal earlier that was here. It's the exact same insurance as every single federal employee until this year. Now all members of Congress and our staff are all in Obamacare. I'm in the D.C. Health Exchange. And my family's thoroughly enjoying the paperwork nightmare of that. So we are in the same exchanges that everyone else is complaining about, and rightfully so complaining about. So that's not any different. Most of those things, there's a 401k plan for us that's out there and that I can pay into that's a matching, I believe it's up to 5%, which is pretty typical for a lot of companies. So there's that. So most of those things that you've heard about are all gone, and by the way, they should be gone. Congress should live under the exact same laws as everyone else and have the exact same issues. With the exception, yeah, thank you. With the exception of one perk, and I can tell you our one perk. I have a license tag on my truck in Washington, D.C. that allows me to park anywhere I want to and not pay the meter. And it's awesome. Okay? So that is my one perk that I have up there. So let me take one more question. Yes, sir, way in the back. Yes, sir. Are we having meaningful progress in the Keystone Pipeline? Well, let me just give you this. We're at day, if I remember my count correctly, we're at day 1,936 of the permit request for the Keystone Pipeline. Not of construction, on the permit request. Here's a reason why it is a bad deal to have the federal government have control of all this stuff. Because if they don't want to give you a permit and they don't like your business, they'll just hold it. And you're screaming at a bureaucrat somewhere in the vast sea of bureaucrats there and can't seem to find where to be able to get a right answer on it. Now, it's right that we do have international connections on that international pipeline. It's not right. It's almost 2,000 days, and they can't decide yet. They're still studying it. To give you a point of comparison, the last 3 international pipelines have combined have not been 2,000 days in permitting. We have 2 pipelines coming from that exact same area of Canada. This is not new. By the way, if you haven't heard this, there's all this rumor out there that this is brand new, never been done before. A decade and a half ago, a pipeline came from that exact same area, from the same company, by the way, goes to be refined in Chicago, Illinois, is functioning right now. We have another pipeline from the Enbridge company going from that exact same area all the way to the Gulf Coast, running almost identical same route as the Keystone is proposing to run. It was permitted a decade ago and is fully functioning. This is adding a third pipeline, not a brand new pipeline. That's all it is. It's a third pipeline coming from the same area. And this administration doesn't want to allow the advancement of fossil fuels, just flat out. And so they're finding every way they can to be able to stop it, install it. So that has been our great frustration. Why is it a big deal? It's a big deal because we're within 10 years of being North American energy independent. We're within 10 years. And a major component of that is this Keystone pipeline. If we bring in the Keystone pipeline, bring in that crude, refine it on American refineries on the Gulf Coast, it replaces entirely our supply we receive from Venezuela. Entirely. Okay, I would rather trade with Canada than Venezuela. Now, that's just me. If we're going to buy the oil, if we're going to use it, I'd rather trade with Canada. We've gotten along with Canada pretty well since the whole War of 1812 thing was resolved. Since that time, we seem to be doing fine as a trading partner. But if we can get to the point where we're North American energy independent, that's a game changer for us in how we actually handle international relations and what happens. So we can purchase fuel from where we want to. Basic principle of an economy. If you can't provide your own food and your own fuel, you're always at the mercy of someone else. So we better make sure those two areas are secure. And right now we're very close to the fuel side, and it's time to finish that. So we'll keep on pressing. I can't even begin to tell you how many votes we've taken and how many speeches and everything else have been taken on that. But it's currently unresolved, still on now Secretary Kerry's desk, him waiting to make a decision if he's going to do one more study or finish this one out. I know I've gone a couple minutes over on that. I apologize for that. That may not pass the fairness test on it, so y'all to be able to get away, come to think of it. But I appreciate the conversation. Please know that we can answer questions and get a chance to go through the ongoing conversation about what's happening in D.C. and try to help you. All 5 of the representatives and the 2 senators all have regional offices. If you have questions, contact our offices. If you get an email blast and it sounds crazy, it might be. Call one of your elected representatives in their office and let us answer and help that. That's why we're there, to be able to help carry the voice that you've got and to be able to help answer the questions. So God bless you. Thanks for being around. Good to meet you.
And the Congressman has signed our book that will go to Celia Clinton. Upcoming programs, Dina McLeod, Executive Director of the Woody Guthrie Center. And the next week, February 5th, Above and Beyond Awards to the Police Officer and Firefighter of the Year. I need some more photos for Mystery Rotarian. Thanks again to the Congressman for his time today, and best wishes for Emma as she competes in the 4-way speech contest. See you next week. Bye-bye.